GI Bill and Robinson Thrill. I am, as always, your host, Christopher Paul Dugdale, MEDMA. We are Duncanville High School in these United States, and today is March 11th, 2021. And on this date in history, in 2020, the world was shut down for COVID. I know you probably can't imagine this, but the world was a much different place then. You didn't have to go out and wear masks in public, and you could travel wherever you wanted. I was supposed to go with my beloved wife, Amber Dawn Dugdale, to Greece on the 12th, and unfortunately we were derailed and forced to stay within the confines of the United States for the next prolonged period of time. So, anyway, everyone have a great, fantastic day, and we'll have a great one today. Okay, so post-World War II, okay? Now we have 12 million people mobilized in the military. Truman said, with all the atomic weapons that we have, we don't need all of that, so he cuts the military down to 1.5 million people. Now, during the war, they froze all the prices and they froze wages so that companies could stay in business and people be able to get what they needed, you know? I mean, could you imagine if you're in a place where someone might charge, I don't know, $60 for a bottle of hand sanitizer, you know? Or imagine if there's a shortage of toilet paper. I know none of you can, okay? I find I just drag my bottom on the ground like the dog does outside, and that takes care of everything. So just watch out for stickers if you do it that way. Okay. During the war, Truman dealt with people that were in unions by telling them that if you decided to go on strike, that you'd be drafted into the military. Now, if you want to talk about someone who does something for civil rights, it's Truman. And Truman did this really at the expense of his own political career. He didn't like the way that black veterans were being treated when they came back from the war, so he will sign an executive order to end segregation in both federal jobs and the military in 1948. Uh, this is something that many people believed would cost him his reelection bid. By the way, I'm sorry if I'm not going fast enough for some of you. Okay? But you'll find that this will take less time than we do in class. So, everyone doing okay? Everyone take out your ear crack pipes? Or do you have men listening to me? Anyway, by the way, I think you probably noticed that there's some questions that go along with this video. I hope you're enjoying it. I'll talk to you soon. Actually, what am I talking about? I'm still talking to you. The Taft-Hartley Act. So now that the war is over, we need to get this whole union thing under control. Okay? So this is when they come up with the Taft-Hartley Act. Now, the Taft-Hartley Act is going to be something that outrages business. And by the way, if you want to write a super boring paper about this, there are so many primary resources in the 6th floor of the UTA library on the Taft-Hartley Act that you will probably make yourself sick. Okay? So it does 4 things. Okay? So number one, it outlaws the closed shop, and this makes businesses only hire union members. So no longer could they have that. Okay, so it outlaws a closed shop. Okay, so this kind of gives you the option of whether or not you want to join a union. Okay, two, states could pass right to work laws, and this would outlaw union shops where new workers have to join the union. Three is outlawing feather bedding. Now I know you all know what feather bedding is, so I'm gonna be really ridiculous, and I'm going to explain it anyway. Feather bedding is when you work less to create more jobs. Okay, so instead of giving it your 100%, you go at about 75%. And if you can find 3 other people to go at 75%, then there you need one more person to fill that hole. If they're doing 75%. If they do 100%, then you have 4 people that you need to do, but then that just gets into complicated math. So let's just say you work less to create more jobs. It also made union leaders take a non-communist oath because there were a lot of people that were afraid that with all the unions out there, that it would make it so that communism might be easier to spread into the United States. So the whole thought is if you make it so that not everyone's in a union, you won't have unions causing people to revolt and rebel and overthrow the government. Because that was the big concern that most people had. A lot of talk about labor. Hope you're all having fun. By the way, if you're wondering why I smell so good, it's because of my antiperspirant. It's called Degree. As it gets hotter in here, you can't tell because I still smell fantastic. Who smells fantastic? Oh, that's me. It's me. Okay, the General Agreement of Tariffs and Trade, or GATT. This tries to regulate trade after World War II. Eventually, this will be replaced by the WTO, or the World Trade Organization. Uh, it has World Trade Centers all over the world, including Dallas and in New York. There are other cities as well, but I thought I'd go with those two. Okay. And by the way, you'll notice that none of the arrows on that map point to New York or Dallas, so they do have them there though, but not necessarily GATT. GATT. Okay. By the way, GATT is General Agreement of Tariffs and Trade. Okay. Let's go ahead and go forward. Now, you've got 12 million people coming back for jobs. You don't want a lot of people without jobs when they come back, so let's do something to try and help people out. And they start off with what's called the GI Bill. Now, the GI Bill will give loans to veterans to go to college, to start a business, or to buy a home. And millions of soldiers will take advantage of the GI Bill over the next, well, up until today. Now, there's different variations of the GI Bill, but the whole idea is to give our veterans a leg up on the competition. Now, when people get back from the war, they go home. They don't have cable television. They didn't have YouTube. They didn't have Netflix. They got home and all they had to do was read. And since many of you don't read, you might not understand uh, that does make things a little bit more difficult. So, uh, as a result, with nothing else to do, they have 65 million children over the next 16 years. So, your great grandparents really loved each other and didn't have cable. That's how 65 million people were born. In addition, you have Levittown. This is one of the first mass-produced residential communities. This is done by Bill Levitt, and basically what this is, it's the beginning of the cookie-cutter homes. They build a bunch of homes right next to each other. They all look very, very similar. They're not very interesting. But it does create the American dream of every American should own their own home, and they tried to make this a reality for all the Protestant white people. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about the Catholic Hispanic people? Nope. What about the Protestant black people? Nope. What about the Catholic Asians? Nope. What about the Native Americans? Nope. What about the answer is unless you were Protestant and white, it didn't include you. Do 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 do. Want to take you to Levittown, only if you're white and Protestant. Do 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 do. The fair deal. So, this is Truman's plan to fix the U.S. He wants to increase Social Security benefits, raise minimum wage, and have a civil rights bill. Now, Congress is only going to do a few things like the Social Security and minimum wage, and they create a Fair Housing Act, which does nothing to help you unless you are white. So it doesn't really help. Uh, as a result of the lack of support that he gets, Truman is going to call them the Do Nothing Congress. Okay. He also tried to pass a national health care bill, which we're very lucky today that we are about as close to getting it passed as we were, what was that, 72 years ago? So, way to go, Congress. Way to take care of the people. So, I kind of rolled through this one pretty quick. They doubled minimum wage. I think we talked about some of the dangers of doubling minimum wage because it won't take long for prices to catch up to it. And with everything becoming more expensive, you would see rent and all the consumables and food double in price. Just as they have doubled in price since minimum wage went from $3.35 to $7.25 over about a 10-year span, uh, the price of goods more than doubled in that time period. So, back when I was your age, I used to be able to go in and buy myself a Coca-Cola at a vending machine for about 50 cents. Now it's going to cost you $1.25. So thanks a lot, Progress. Thanks a lot, America. Here we go. So the Alta Conference. Now, before any of you get super excited, I need to tell you that there's some problems here. This happens before the end of the war. Now, I don't bring it up until now because this is all about creating the post-war world. Okay, this was put together by FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. See him sitting in the middle of the picture right there on the left? That's FDR. There's Churchill on the left, who really looks like he fills out that jacket with all of his fat. And on the right, you have Stalin, okay, who is sitting there and looks like he's laughing, but he's probably angrily shouting at someone because he doesn't really laugh a lot. So it's going to do three things, unless you want me to call it two, but then one of the parts will have two parts instead of that. So let me just go with three parts. So number one, FDR and Churchill would recognize the communist Poland if there were free elections, which means that if they let them choose their own form of government in Poland, and they wanted to be communist, then they could be communist. So they held elections, and you would be surprised to find out that nearly 100% of the people voted for Poland become communist. 100%. Because you see that so many elections that 100% of the people are in favor of something. Okay. Number two was the Declaration of Liberated Europe. And this would let people choose their own form of government. Okay. The whole idea here is to try and push democracy, but make it look like people wanted it, not that they wanted it against their will. Okay. Now, FDR, Churchill, and Stalin saw that it was a big mistake ending World War I the way it did, and that if you leave everything in pieces, you're probably going to have World War III coming up pretty soon. So, the three of them together decided that they were going to fix things and rebuild. So they're going to divide Germany and Berlin into four different zones. Okay? One controlled by the British, one controlled by the French, one controlled by the US, and the Soviet Union. Okay? So they divide all these places up into four parts. Now, for those of you who understand what foreshadowing means and see what's going to happen in the next section of notes, you'll notice that Berlin is in the middle of the Soviet zone. In fact, it's not in the middle, it's almost over in the Soviet Union. And if you divide that city up into four parts, it's going to be a major problem because it's in the middle of the Soviet zone. So there's going to be a fight. Everyone should have gotten this was going to happen, but people are stupid, so they don't really think about the consequences of everything they do. By the way, the best zone there is probably the French zone because it has the Black Forest, and it is a beautiful region of Germany. If you get a chance to go there. It's beautiful this time of year. Okay, so the Cold War. This is an era of confrontation and competition between the US and Soviet Union from 1946 to about 1990. Okay, a lot of this has to do with the fact that all the policies of the Soviet Union and the United States are in direct conflict with each other. Many of the wars we fought were so that we could sell things to other people. Okay, and we want to have markets all around the world. Well, the Soviets, what they did is they want everyone to be equal, so everyone has equal stuff. So we can't sell things to them if everyone's equal, and you have to get something for everyone at the same time. Okay, Stalin said that the U.S. and Britain held off an attack because they wanted more Soviets to die. Okay, we stopped lending weapons and supplies to the Soviet Union during the war, and we don't help the Soviet Union rebuild after the war. Okay, that and there was a lot of talk about the United States rearming Germany right after we defeat them in World War II and going to attack the Soviet Union. These type of things made it so that we didn't have a lot of warm and fuzzy feelings between us and the Soviet Union. By the way, it influences everything that happens over the next 45 years. Uh, Anytime that they portray people from the Soviet Union in movies, they're always the villain, they're always the bad guy. And it's not until about 5 to 6 years before the end of the Cold War that this starts to change. Even though there were no lessons in school to teach you to hate them, we implicitly knew that they were all bad people, that if you're a Soviet, you don't love your children, that you're not a good person. Okay, so here we go. So, propaganda is taught from an early age. Now, in these two things, let me go over this and then I'll explain how this is used to spread propaganda. So, you have the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, also known as NATO. This is a defense alliance against communism. We're part of NATO even today, the United States is. We are the good guys. We protect people from other people. So we protect them. We're defensive. Okay. Now, the communist nations are part of what's called the Warsaw Pact, and this is a military alliance in Eastern Europe. Now, Eastern Europe, those are those red countries up there. They're all communist. They're all bad guys. Okay. They're a military alliance formed by Soviet leaders because of NATO. Now, it's based in Poland because they don't want to put it in the Soviet Union because then it makes it look like the Soviets control it, even though they do. Okay, now where's the propaganda in the slide? I promised you some propaganda, and I'll show you where it is. Now, if you notice, we say that our organization, NATO, is a defense alliance, but the Warsaw Pact is a military alliance. We seem like we're people that protect while they look like they're more aggressive. So just simple wording like this can plant seeds in you that one side is bad from the very beginning. Okay? The truth is we're both military alliances. Okay, the Iron Curtain. So if you notice there's a dark line that goes to the left of East Germany, the Czech Republic, or Czechoslovakia at that time, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, and Albania. It does not include Yugoslavia because Yugoslavia became communist on its own. Churchill said that this is basically what you would call this separation between the East and the West. And this was a pretty popular term describing that separation. Now, if you were in cities that bordered on the Iron Curtain, you could actually get broadcasts from the other side, and both sides would put a lot of money into programming to try and prove that theirs was the more superior view. Shocking. Okay, so we now have a secret war. Let's see what we can do to try and end it. So one of our diplomats, a guy by the name of George Kennan, the guy on the left with the never-ending forehead, uh, he gets together with a Russian ambassador, and he puts together what's called the Long Telegram. Now they call it the Long Telegram because it's pretty long. In fact, I want to say that your OV is over the Long Telegram. And they talk about Russian insecurity and fear of the West, and that it is impossible for there to be peace between the US and Soviet Union. And as a result, the United States decides decides to treat it like a virus or disease. The containment policy. Keep communism in its present borders. Now, I know what you're thinking. I have no idea what this means. You're going to force someone to be in one area and away from other people and think that something's not going to spread? I know it sounds unrealistic and you couldn't possibly understand that. By the way, I hope none of you forgot what sarcasm is or ironic speaking because guess what? I just snuck some of that in when you weren't looking. Okay. By the way, the on the right hand side you see the political cartoon. You see Uncle Sam at the top, and he's trying to push everything towards the Soviet Union and the tiny little bear there. On the other side, on the picture at the bottom, you see the bear. The bear does represent the Soviet Union or Russia, and it's pushing into these other territories as well. And the United States is going to try and stop them. Now, there's really no actual fighting between the Soviets and the United States. Most of it is wars that's fought using other people, so it's no direct conflict between the two countries. The Truman Doctrine. Okay, the U.S. promises to stop communism, and the first place we decide to go is Turkey and Greece, and we send $400 million to Turkey and Greece to stop the spread of communism. Okay, and it actually does work. Don't be surprised if you see a question about this on your test. By the way, other stuff I've covered today is also fair game, but I thought I would say that about this for some reason. Now, if you remember on the last test, we talked about protectorates. These are nations where the imperial power advises them and local people stay in charge. Okay? We call it protectorate. Now, if we're talking about the Soviet Union, if they do the same thing, it's not called a protectorate. No, we have to have an evil name for them, something that scares people. So we use the term satellite nations. Okay? Now, satellites don't seem really scary today, but back then they were especially terrifying because you could put something in space, you could put a nuclear bomb there, and you could wipe out everyone. So it's scary. So satellite nations, this is the Soviet Union attempt to do the same thing that the U.S. is doing. So Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia. Okay, they are nations that are led by people in their country that support the Soviets, but they're controlled by the Soviet army and they have to follow Soviet policies. If you fall out of line, expect the army to come in there and murder you with anger in a kind of angry way. Okay, here we go. The Marshall Plan. Okay, the U.S. would give money to Europe to help them rebuild to stop the spread of communism. Again, everything here is to fight communism and to rebuild strong democracies that will help the U.S. prevent the spread of communism. So we help all these countries rebuild. Now, if you look at this, at the map, or not the map, but on the chart on the right, outside of Turkey and Greece, all of those countries are in Western Europe. Okay, so no money is really going to anyone except for countries that are naturally going to be on the U.S.'s side. Now, we do offer the money to all nations to rebuild, but it's turned down by the Soviet Union and all of its satellite nations. So it's basically our way of rebuilding. Now, was it worth it? That would be a question for you to think about. And on we. Now, the National Security Act. This is going to create the Joint Chief of Staff, basically the person that is in charge of the president's cabinet, the the main advisor to the president. Okay, this puts the Department of Defense over the Army, Navy, and Air Force. This the Department of Defense will actually replace the Department of War because again, remember we want to be seen as the good guys, so no longer do we have a Department of War. Now we have the Department of Defense, so we are nice, good people. Okay, so make sure that you get that separation there. It's the fact that the United States is the good guys. Okay, so this creates the National Security Council. I'm sure you've heard of the NSA before. They've made our lives so much easier in no way whatsoever, and they have the right to spy on us all the time. In addition to the NSA, it creates the CIA, okay, the Central Intelligence Agency, and this is basically our whole spy group. They work around the world to either prevent revolutions or cause revolutions. We're trying to hurt communist nations any way we can or prevent them from developing. We use secret or covert operations. Okay, and this does work in Turkey, Iran, and Greece. Now, we talked about Turkey and Greece earlier, where we sent them $400 million. Well, we also had the CIA there working to try and destabilize the communist movements in those countries. So all of this is an attempt of us trying to take over and rule the world. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Okay, Jackie Robinson. Okay, he becomes the first African American to break the color barrier in sports. And yes, I know on the right I have a black and white picture, and on the left I have a picture in color, but that's not really what I meant. He is a member of the Brooklyn Dodgers. He's second baseman, and he starts playing baseball in the major leagues. There were some players that were better than him, but he had the best temperament for it. People were calling him racial slurs whenever they would go from city to city. He had to stay in a different hotel than the rest of the team. In fact, many people wouldn't even eat with him. It's segregation, but due to the hardships that he faced, he opened the door, and this opened the door for other sports as well. So just think about that next time that you're going to Subway and they don't let you in. Well, no, actually, that's completely different. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm hungry right now. I shouldn't do this while I'm hungry. I'm not really hungry for Subway. That would kill me. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and keep on going. Okay. By the way, don't forget to be looking for the apple. Okay. I know that you've been looking for the apple this entire time. I made the announcement at the beginning, but we'll see where this goes from here. Okay. This is where we're wrapping up today. I hope you enjoyed the first day of notes. And if you didn't notice the apple that was in the video, it's because I didn't put one in there. But I thought it'd make it more fun for you to look for it. The first person to mention this, I will mention you in the video tomorrow. In fact, I'll even say something nice to you. So make sure you email it to me first, though. Now, how do you know if you're first? Well, you'll hear about it in the video tomorrow. So everyone, good night, good luck, and don't do illegal things that are bad.